Welcome to the Thursday edition of the show. It's Maz and the double C's, Colson and Curtis, in for Barney today, holding things down. We get some new imaging off the top there. Nice. We are on 620 CKRM, and if you're watching on X, give us a follow. Or on YouTube, just go to SportsCage.com if you haven't connected yet with our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. The show is brought to you today by Access Communications, trusted in rural Saskatchewan for internet, TV, and home security. Lots going on. Glen Suitor's on his European vacation. We'll check in with Suits in just a couple of minutes. He's still sightseeing. I believe he's in Italy before he moves on and tackles the rest of Europe. That's coming up in just a couple of minutes. Just after 4 o'clock, voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Dave Thomas, will join us. We haven't really had a chance to talk to Dave since all the free agency waters have settled. I want to get his thoughts. CFL Invitational Combine is happening tomorrow. There's a little bit of a local flavor. Some guys try to get an invite to the CFL Combine, which will be coming up next month here in Regina. And looking forward to this. Matt Scott, head coach of Fort Knox of the PJHL. Fort Capel's hockey team taking on the Assiniboia Southern Rebels in the PJHL playoffs starting tomorrow night. Matt Scott will join the show. Bit of a powerhouse, bit of a wagon, as the kids would say this season. 31 wins and only 6 losses. But I want to start with something it's been bubbling for a while, and I know it's been bugging a lot of people, people with common sense like me that kind of think alike. And in the past few days, especially in the last week, it's kind of reached a fever pitch. We talked about it on the show when it first came up. It was a little offside then, and now it's even worse. I think, to a point, I think it's just plain wrong. Talking about the cancel culture mob that is out to get Wayne Gretzky. So this started a month ago when pictures came out that he was at the presidential inauguration parties in Mar-a-Lago in Florida. To the best of our knowledge, Wayne Gretzky lives in Florida, and I think he's a neighbor of Trump. They've golfed together. His brother-in-law, Dustin Johnson, I think he knew him before he was ever in politics, just as a celebrity. But regardless, last time I checked, Wayne was allowed to vote for whoever he wanted because that's his democratic right. It's a democratic right that we all have. You can vote for who you want. You don't have to tell anybody. You shouldn't have to be lumped in with anything if you do, but now he is. Can you find me a video on social media where Wayne Gretzky is talking or telling you how to vote and how to think? No, you can't, because it doesn't exist. That's not him. Never has been. I thought this story was just going to cool down and die. But then after last week at the Four Nations Cup final, where Wayne started drawing criticism for not wearing a Team Canada jersey on the ice before the game. So the woke mob was mad at that. He came out pregame to present was that a flag or a banner in a nice suit. Micah Ruzioni from Team USA decided to wear a Johnny Gaudreau jersey. That was his choice. I've seen Wayne at other events like we all have. He doesn't usually wear jerseys. He's usually dressed as a normal civilian. People were also mad that he came out of the gate at the TD Garden by the American bench. That probably isn't his call. That's probably a logistics thing, whoever is running the event, as to, okay, you're going to get on the ice. Here's the fastest way to get to center to do this with the carpet and all of that. People are mad that he gave a thumbs up to the American bench. People were calling him a traitor after that. He's un-Canadian and that we should disown him because of who he legally voted for. Wayne has done more for hockey than any other person we will ever know. Dead stop, period. I don't think there is a Four Nations Cup if there is no Wayne Gretzky. For what he was able to do to expand the NHL in the States, it just wouldn't happen without him. So a lot of people flying in over the top, a lot of horrible things to say about the Great One, who's been nothing but an ambassador for not only hockey, but Canada as well. But a couple of people that would know Wayne on a personal level in the NHL came out in support of him the other day. And there's a couple of videos here we want to show you. Now, these guys would know because they were in the league. They know Wayne. So the first video here, this is Brant Myers. Remember Brant Myers from the Lethbridge Hurricanes? Went on to have a long storied NHL career, a tough guy. So this is what Brant Myers had to say about this whole situation on his podcast.
You see a lot of people online and they're bashing the great one, Wayne Gretzky. And you know what? I think that's piss poor class out of, from anybody that does that, especially if you're a Canadian. He grew hockey in the United States from 21 teams to like 28. He's done more for the game than anybody on the planet of the earth. And there's those keyboard warriors that are saying that you're done with 99 and he's a piece of... Just because he voted for a guy named Donald Trump, who cares? He's not blowing up your inbox because of who you voted for. I mean, the guy's got class, an absolute icon and legend. I'm not saying that you're not entitled to your opinion. I just think that it's really classless to do that, especially from a guy that has given so much to the game of hockey. His whole life, he's the best ambassador that hockey has ever known. And never will know. Keep going, Wayne.
All right. And nobody would know it better than Brant Myers, somebody who played in the NHL in some cities where there was no hockey before a Wayne Gretzky come along. And the second video here, this is Tim Peel. We had him on the show back in December. Great guy, retired NHL referee. And this was his take on the Snipes and Stripes podcast that he does with Jeremy Roenick. Do you guys want to roll that one?
I am utterly disgusted in the country that I grew up in and still love. Now they're trying to cancel the greatest hockey player of all time, our friend Wayne Gretzky, who's done so much for Canadian hockey, has been the epitome of class his entire career, has grown the sport in areas in the U.S. that probably it never would have worked without Wayne Gretzky. And because he didn't come out with a Team Canada jersey on, and because he's friends with Donald Trump, they want to try to cancel him. Terry Jones tweeted out a couple days ago, he goes, "I've covered Wayne Gretzky since the WHA and the NHL. I've authored a couple of his books. Wayne Gretzky needs to come out and make a statement." And I'm like, are you a complete moron? Wayne Gretzky does not owe you guys anything. Who cares what celebrity endorses a political figure? It's none of our business, and it's none of your business. And I think it's disgraceful.
I agree with Peeler 100%. And to Terry Jones, if you wrote books about Wayne Gretzky, then you obviously, if they were successful, and I think they were, you made money off Wayne Gretzky. So if you are as disgusted as you say you are, maybe you should return all funds to Wayne or to anybody that bought your book if you're disavowing the relationship that you had. You benefited from Wayne being Wayne, like we all have. I don't know. Am I alone in this? Gretzky canceled, or just leave him alone? There's enough other things going on in this country that have nothing to do with hockey that should have you maybe more mad than this, but it seems like this is the only thing that you want to focus on. That and the fact the Edmonton Oilers need a real goalie. Prairie Land Rentals text line. Where you come in at, should you agree with what you heard, or you feel like, no, Gretzky, he's done. Dead to me now. 306-936-6262. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to go across the pond and connect with Glen Suitor on his European vacation on the Sports Cage on 620 CKRM, and we're streaming on our YouTube channel at sportscage.com. Welcome back to the show. The Sports Cage is brought to you by Access Communications, trusted in rural Saskatchewan for internet, TV, and home security. He's been traveling the world, and we've been following him every step of the way. It's time now for press coverage with Glen Suitor, brought to you by Bronco Plumbing and Heating, where professional service is guaranteed. They'll treat you right. 781-2090. Because the internet is sketchy, we have him on the phone. Glen Suitor, we say good evening. Grazie. Thanks for joining us again. Suits, where in the world are you today?
Yeah, I am in Florence, Italy now, and got here a couple of days ago, Maz. really cool city. Lots and lots of young people, lots of students that are visiting all the different museums and different sites to see here, but very different vibe than Rome. This is my first trip over here, as I've mentioned before, so it's all brand new to me, but got a chance yesterday to go and see the statue of the David, and that was impressive. I know many people have, if they're listening right now, have probably heard of it. They've probably seen pictures of it. One of the most world-renowned sculptures of all time by Michelangelo, and it, you know, when I was thinking about, we went to go see it, I've seen many pictures, and I thought, you know what, I want to see it for sure live, but I've seen a lot of pictures of it, so I don't think it'll be all that big a deal. But when you get into that building and you walk up and see it, it is unbelievably impressive. I mean, it's just, first of all, the sheer size of it, the detail, the thought that Michelangelo actually carved it out of one block of marble is incredible. At times for those statues, the artists would put them together, and there would be different pieces that they'd add together afterwards. But this was one huge block of marble. Other very famous sculptors couldn't do it, and he took it on. And when you walk in there and you see the detail, and then you think of the story and the look on his face, his expression. I mean, it's the story of David and Goliath, of course. And it's this statue in the Academia is just before he's about to fight the giant. This statue was carved in at that moment. That's the time that they were envisioning. So he has his sling on his shoulder, and he has the rocks in his other hand, and he's about to sling the rock to knock the giant out and then cut his head off. And the look and the expression in his face is absolutely amazing. It's basically saying, bring it on, with a guy that's 100 feet bigger than him and all of that, because it was the myth is that it was David and Goliath. So you can't take your eyes off it when you see it live. I mean, ultra impressive. I love the story because it's the ultimate underdog, and he went on to be a king.
Now, Suits, some of the adventures, a couple of the texts that we got, and some people had never been to Europe before, and I'm curious about this as well. When you went to go take the tour of the Colosseum, what does that cost? Like when you went to see the statue of David yesterday, is it free to get into the museum, or what does that cost? Because some, like the museums here that we kind of know, you can just wander in and there is no charge.
Yeah, no, there is charges for those things, and it depends on what you want to do. I think you can go into the Colosseum for, anywhere between about $18 to $80 if you're getting guided tours and things like that. We had a guided tour in the Colosseum that took us below to where the locker rooms were, where the gladiators and the animals would be kept before they were brought out onto the stage. So we had sort of a tour that was another level. In fact, I don't think this tour has been open for very long. I think this has been a tour that just has opened recently. So we paid a little bit more to make sure we could see all of that. So there's different levels of that, but most of the major museums, just like yesterday at the David, we had to pay there, and I believe that was around $40, $50, something like that. So there are costs for the major museums, some of the different churches. I can't remember if we paid to go to the Vatican. I think we walked in there, and we did have to pay to get into St. Peter's, the church. So there are some charges. You can walk around within the Vatican without paying, but to get into certain areas you have to pay. So yeah, it's not cheap, and I know that a lot of people can't do it. We've been planning this for years and years, so I've been able to save a whole bunch of pop bottles and make sure we had enough money to do it. But it's a once in a lifetime thing. Thing for me to be able to see it. So yeah, you're going to pay for the tours.
Hey, you know what? I was just curious because obviously, you got to maintain these places. It's so funny when you mentioned that you had to pay to get into the Vatican. I thought we covered off last week that forgiveness was free. Maybe that was a different conversation. But I want to know, since you're in Italy there, have you had, I'm not sure if you're a coffee guy, but my wife said when she lived there that the coffee, it's outstanding. Like, you're not going to get any better. Have you had any great coffee since you've been there, Suits?
Well, only every single morning. Sometimes, sometimes I joke with my buddy I'm traveling with, who is Italian, and his family and his ancestry is from Lucca in Italy, which isn't that far from here, I don't think. But when I talk and joke with him, I say, is there any chance we can find some A, good coffee, B, good wine, and C, good food when we're in Italy? Well, those three boxes were checked immediately and have been checked at every meal, every breakfast cappuccino or latte or whatever you have in the morning. Always fantastic. And here's the other thing that I didn't realize that I love so much. These morning pastries and all the different sort of desserts that come with morning, lunch, or dinner. I hope I'm not adding too many LBs here because, yikes, the food is unbelievable. There's a sandwich shop that you can buy for $14. You can buy this sandwich that, seriously, you eat one sandwich, you're pretty much good for the day. And they're all over the place in Italy. We saw them in the airport. We've seen them here in Florence, and also had one from the same place in Rome. So outstanding pastas. We had a big steak dinner last night, which was fantastic. And yeah, They know how to do the food, the wine, and the coffee. No question.
All right. Before we get into sports, what do the next couple of days look like for the Glen Suitor European travel itinerary?
Well, we're in Florence, as we just talked about, and that means there's a few clothing stores here. So what we've realized now is that we're going to have to go and buy another suitcase. So it looks like I'll be checking an extra bag on the next leg. And that's only because the choice in tie, I mean, I'm going to have a whole new look of ties for the upcoming CFL season that I'm only buying for on-air stuff. But the next leg is to pack all that stuff up and figure it out tomorrow. And then we fly from Florence to London Florence to Paris, and then we're going to rent a car in Paris and drive to Normandy. So the next leg is the chance to pay homage in Normandy, go to all the beaches, all of the cemeteries and memorials. And we actually want to try and make the drive to Vimy Ridge as well and do the same there. This is a real important leg for me in the journey, too, because of how much I support the military and got a chance to work with the squadron up in Cold Lake, Alberta, as an honorary colonel for the 417 Squadron. So I've got this great relationship with the military, and this will be a chance to go and pay homage to the men and women that sacrificed everything for our freedom.
Glenn, as we switch into sports, some sad news. We found out yesterday that 10-year CFL veteran, and he was a dominant force when he played, Gerald Bayless, who had a small stint with the Riders, ended up passing away. Did you ever play with Bayless when you were still playing?
Yes. Yeah, Gerald Bayless. Well, first of all, let's talk about the person, because that's, to me, the most important aspect. And whether it's when we have to have these conversations when someone passes or when we're talking about them as former teammates and they're off doing other things in the world. But I think the person is the first thing that's most important. And Gerald was such a fantastic teammate. And I know it may sound to listeners at times that I use that phrase and talk about guys as great teammates quite often, but I honestly don't. I mean, it sounds like it's taken for granted, but it's really not. If you're a great teammate, I think that's the greatest compliment that I can give anybody, because it means so much. And anyone who's played organized sports and team sports knows what I'm talking about. And if you don't, I think from watching, and you haven't played sports, I think from watching from a distance, the great teams. When the great teams win championships, it's because they're together and they're on the same page and they're great teammates with each other. So, and they trust each other. So, that's first and foremost for me. Gerald was the guy that you'd sit in the locker room after making a mistake in a game, and he'd be one of the first to come and, give you that pat on the shoulder, say that, forget about it, let's move on, doesn't matter, we'll get it the next game, the next play, whatever it is. But always kind of had a smile on his face, always happy to be at work, so that's infectious. You're walking around the locker room, and sometimes it gets into the sort of the dregs of the season, and you're trying to pick yourself up and stay motivated. And he was always in there with the smile, ready to work and ready to play. So you had to sort of follow that example. And then as a player on the field, just wow. I mean, 4-time All-Star. But outside of the accolades like that, just an every down player. An every down player. And before we came on the air, Maz, I thought you made a great comparison with Micah Johnson because they have very similar body shape. They were both very, very powerful, sort of low center of gravity for defensive linemen, but had tremendous quickness. And that's one of the things that Micah Johnson has done so well, is that he's able to move that massive, strong body of his like a linebacker or even a DB at times. And when offensive linemen have to deal with a guy that's that big and can power rush or bull rush, but is also so quick that they can go around him in a heartbeat, it's almost impossible to consistently block a player like that. And Gerald Bayless was that type of player. He low center of gravity, tremendous strength and size for his, for being his height that he was, but the quickness of a DB or linebacker. And that combination is Micah Johnson. I think it's a great comparison.
When Bayless was at the top of his game, and I remember this. Now, this was in the era of not all the games were televised. Like, it's not like it was today. There was no internet. The highlights were shoddy, spotty at best. But I remember him just blowing up other offenses. He was that type of player that could just dominate and shut down, making your job, Glenn, obviously easier. If Bayless is blowing up the play at the line of scrimmage, the ball is never, ever getting thrown, or never getting close to you. As a teammate, how much would you love when you would see the magic happen and it's like, that's Bayless again? Nope. That play's going nowhere.
Yeah. Well, it's a great point, because I say many times when covering the game now, if you can get pressure with 3 or 4, then you can do all kinds of exotic type of coverage behind that. So whether it's linebackers and DBs in combination or man and zone combinations, if you have to blitz, then you lose a lot of those combination coverages because you've occupied the line of scrimmage with more players. So, that's a simplistic way to explain it, but that's what Gerald Bayless and a guy like Micah Johnson does. And Bayless was fantastic at it, because Gerald would not only demand a double team, but when he beat the double team, that meant the offense would have to keep their back in as well. So the tailback couldn't get out in a pattern or in a route. The double team on the D line meant that the other 3 D linemen had one-on-ones on every play. And Bayless was still beating that 3-on-1 mismatch. They were trying to load him up to make sure they couldn't stop him. But then we'd sit and watch plays. And here's the best part about it, Maz, and this is what I meant off the top, is that as a player, when we talk about him as a player, he never took a play off. Like, I think most of the time D linemen almost have to take at times a playoff. You hope that they don't, and you don't want them to, but they're human. And if you're getting blocked like that every single down at those collisions at the line of scrimmage, at some point you're peaking up and you're not going full because you have to take that second to catch your breath. And Bayless never did that. He never, ever did that. So when we'd watch film and we'd watch tape, back then it was almost film. now it's video. But when we watched that, every single down, Bayless was beating those double teams or triple teams, and he never took a playoff. And that's how you become really a great teammate first and foremost, is that you put the full effort in. You're all in, all the chips in the middle of the table. He was that guy. So that would pull a whole bunch of people, including yours truly, right into that middle of the table with him. And then when you combine that with a Bobby Jurison and guys like that, and they're all following in that example, that's how you win a championship.
The CFL Invitational Combine is happening tomorrow. There are 3 players from Saskatchewan vying for the chance to get the invite to the CFL Combine in Regina. You've been around the game a long time. What's more important, the Underwear Olympics and the drills they're going to run, or an interview to find out about character and personality? Because as you just spoke, it takes both if you're going to be an impact player in this league.
Well, I hope the players are listening, and what I would say to them is both are important, but if you don't run the fastest 40 time and you walk out of the interview process where the coaches in that process and general manager say to themselves, I think this kid is ready to give us everything he has. He's a good talent. That's why we're testing him. And walking out of that interview, I think he'll go through a wall to try and win and be a great teammate. And getting back to the Gerald conversation and being a great teammate, if the the young men that go in there to those interviews, if they keep in the back of their mind always, how do I always portray that I'm going to be a great teammate no matter what? If you ask me to cover kicks, I'll do it. If you ask me to sweep up the locker room after the game, no problem. If you ask me to help with the equipment, getting on the bus, and also run scout team, no problem. I'll love it. Give me any opportunity you can. You keep with that as your baseline, you'll walk out of that room and the coaches will say, this kid is ready to commit to this team and give us everything he has. I think he's going to be worth a look. That's the step. And so to answer your question, I think the interview and how you carry yourself in that interview is probably, well, let's put it this way. It would be more important to me if I was a coach or a general manager sitting in that room. It would definitely be more important to me. Listen, the difference between a 4.5 and a 4.6 is the blink of an eye. I know coaches get all excited about fast 40 times. I think it's a bit of I don't know. I just don't think it should be emphasized as much as it is, because the difference is a split second, and you can make up a whole second if your mind's right, if you're playing from the shoulders up. So be confident when you walk into the interview, be a leader when you walk into the interview, but be humble and ready to do whatever's asked of you to become a great teammate.
One of the things that always got me, especially about running the 40 time in football, and if you're on defense, Glenn, we've seen it. We've seen it in Rider Nation. Some guys with speed, but couldn't tackle. I care that you can tackle and that you're sticky. I don't care. Nobody's got a stopwatch on in the stands in the Labor Day game when it's the fourth quarter and we need to make a stop. Okay. When it's one-on-one, we need you to tackle. And with the NFL Combine being on right now, and Curtis, I don't know if you have the chance to pull this up, the most famous picture from 25 years ago, what do they call him? A milky Tom Brady. He's just like a bag of milk. There's no muscle tone there, just in his gray shorts and all of that. What is he, a 6th or 7th round pick? Was never supposed to be anything, and then look what that turned into. So I agree with you. That interview part and with the character, all ready to go, because usually if you get to this point, everybody has the talent. It would between your ears whether or not you can turn that talent into something that, you can display it at the right time. So, yeah.
Maz. Sorry, Maz. Yeah, the other thing I was just going to mention about that, it's funny you say DB, because the DB starts every play going backwards. So when you run your 40, you don't start your 40 time going backwards. So I'm not sure, why that's emphasized as much as it is. But, I get it. Speed is speed, and it's good to have it. And maybe I feel this way because I didn't have much of it. I don't know. Suits,
Rider Nation, where we want the hellacious hits, we want the thunder, we want all of that. I said that's the stuff that makes the TSN top 10 or the plays of the year. Not dudes running down the sidelines as fast as they can. We want that hit over the middle that stops somebody in their tracks, and then they are looking around like, what just happened? That number. Riders announced today they're doing a bunch of their free agent camps down in the States like they usually do every year, and I find it interesting. The very last one is on May the 4th, and then training camp is going to open on the 11th. Do you honestly think that with just a week ahead of when camp opens, that somebody could be discovered, and obviously if they had a passport, could get a plane ticket to Saskatoon to potentially start camp with the Riders?
I do, because first of all, I would think that the club would make sure that the passport situation is cleared before they're in the camp, so that if they are discovered that late in the process, that they could be brought up to Canada and have no problem crossing the border. So that would be taken care of, I would think. And then the next step is absolutely. I mean, in those camps, when you do the testing, you've already seen a ton of game video. And to our point with the 40, the game video to me is way more important. I've seen guys that run 4.8s that can run by all the defenders to go make the tackle because they want to more. And that's what you're looking for when you're watching film on a defensive player. How much does a receiver want to win the jump ball? Those are the type of things you see when you watch their video. And that'll all have been done before they go and see them live. The live part is just to get a sense of how they move, when you're in person, but also that interview process, the discussion on how you feel about Canada, how you feel about Canadian football. Sometimes I think you can tell if a guy is so disappointed he didn't make it down south that, maybe he won't be mentally strong enough to come up here and put that all aside and be ready to give everything he's got in Canada. So, I think all those judgments are made much easier when you're in-person interviews. But as far as discovering a guy a week before camp, absolutely. You can do it. And those guys down there will be in shape. They'll be ready to go to camp. So they're staying in shape right now as we speak.
They'll have no idea where they're going, but they're sure going to love it when they get here, especially if they end up making the club. All right, Suits, safe travels. We'll check in with you again next week. It's Glen Suitor. It's press coverage brought to you by Bronco Plumbing and Heating, where professional service is guaranteed. They'll treat you right. 781-2090. Time to take a break on the all-new Sports Cage. If you want to be part of the show, as always, you can call us or text us. Prairieland Rentals text line is the easiest and fastest way to get through at 306-936-6262. It's the Sports Cage on 620 CKRM. Welcome back to the show. Thursdays at the Canadian Brewhouse are pasta and uncorked Thursdays. You can get pasta dishes for just $11.99. Choose from basil chicken penne, Alberta Wagyu ravioli, creamy grilled chicken Alfredo, triple play mac and cheese, barn burner beef stroganoff. And if you drink wine, you can get a 9-ounce glass of wine for the price of a 6. Beer's more your thing. $1 off tankards of Bud and Bud Light. It's Maz in for Barney today along with the double C's, Colson and Curtis. The 3 most popular words in Saskatchewan history are going to get dusted off and chanted again this weekend.
What's that?
Ring those phones. Telemiracle 49 this weekend in Saskatoon. Have you guys ever been to Telemiracle Live and been part of the studio audience, ever been on stage, ever answered the phones as a volunteer? Have you ever been part of the Telemiracle buzz that takes over the province this time every year?
Unfortunately, Maz, I have not. I have not checked that one off the bucket list, but I know Colson's been a part of it to a degree.
Yeah, I got to work with the setup and takedown for a couple of them in Regina here. And yeah, it's a fun show. Didn't have any actual part in it, though I have seen, I think it was my grandma made a donation. I saw her name go across the bottom ticker. So that's the closest I've been to actually involved with the show.
Well, it's so funny. I mean, Telemiracle, it's a Saskatchewan thing, year number 49. And I always remember it as a kid. I mean, you're growing up, and this is the closest thing to Hollywood that you're going to get is Telemiracle. And then I remember the year, I think Mom told us that we were going to get to go to the Centennial Auditorium in Saskatoon and be part of the audience. I think it was like for 3 weeks. I mean, you could barely sleep because this was going to be the highlight of your life, going to Telemiracle. Now, these are the days of Bob McGrath from Sesame Street. He was usually one of the main hosts, and it was a highlight, and you go. And I still remember when we went, and you always think you're going to be kind of in the front row or close to the stage, or like we were in I think the second or third balcony. We were nowhere near the action, but just to be there was crazy. And then as a kid, you would think about how special it would be to be one of the people that would answer the phones. That would be a killer job. And then the people that would bring out the tote board to do the new totals. Like when they said we have a new total, and then you'd knock them down, everybody be standing up and you couldn't sit down to those phones, right? Man. So that's this weekend. I was checking the hours. It starts basically at 6 o'clock on Saturday night and goes until, is it 6 or 7 on Sunday? I always thought it went longer. To me, it seemed longer.
I think it's about 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
That's what they've always kind of done.
It seemed longer.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to anybody that has to be, the entertainment, but you're slotted at 3 a.m. when there's not a lot of people watching. Maybe that's where you got to work your way up to get into prime time. And can we stay up late and watch Telemiracle? It was just such a thing that you planned your weekend around because, well, there was really nothing else going on in the 70s and 80s. That was huge.
I remembered. I actually have another Telemiracle story. So I did the audiovisual side of things for their breakfast fundraiser where they do like announcement of some of the stuff coming up for the next Telemiracle, right? I want to say this was in 22, and this was up in Saskatoon in one of the hotels up there. And the funny part of this was, so they're going through the whole agenda of the breakfast and the event, and then at one point they go, oh, by the way, we have prizes for everybody, so everyone check under your chair. There's 3 ribbons stuck underneath the chairs throughout the room. And when the event had started, some of the people coming for the event was a family who had been sponsored and was given money from Telemiracle, and their daughter was in a wheelchair. And so they had taken a chair away from the table. That ended up being my chair. And so when they say, look for the ribbons, I flip my chair up, and sure enough, there's a ribbon under my chair. And I'm like, no, the young girl in the wheelchair 100% gets to take that prize. I am not touching it because I don't want to look like that kind of person. So
Colson,
there you go.
That's why we love you, because that's who you are. To be like, could you imagine if you're like, no, I won, I fair and square, I had the ribbon.
Yeah, no, and I was working, so I'm also like, I'm getting kind of paid to be here right now. I'm doubly not taking this. So there's my Telemiracle adjacent story.
So I was on the Telemiracle website, and maybe I just couldn't find the right tab, but can anybody find out who the big entertainers are this year? Because it's not on there. It's just like there's some stuff, but I couldn't find out. Like, I think Bob McGrath has passed on. God, rest in peace. And Gene Hackman passed away as well, 95. The replacements, Coach McGinty. Anyways, so I couldn't find who the big entertainment was for this year. So Colson, if you can track that down.
It looks like one of our SportsCage friends, Brad Johnner, is coming.
Ooh, now here's the thing. Can you do a Telemiracle nowadays without the Johners? In some form or another? Because I remember the Johners when they were just getting started. Like any young aspiring entertainer in Saskatchewan, Telemiracle was a must book. Like you had to be on. So I still remember that. So that makes sense if Brad Johnner's going to be there.
And it looks like Tennille Arts, Shaylin Taylor, the Telemiracle House Band, Luke Johnner, and Jeffrey Straker, and Lisa Franks, and Chris Henderson. He's actually, I've met him before. He went on one of the country cookouts with us and got to set up sound for Chris Henderson on a 620 CQRM country cookout. He's a cool guy. And Alex Brown, Beverly Mahood. Yeah, it's like there's a handful of people here. Where you're not looking very hard on the website, are you there, Mass?
Well, maybe I just didn't see it. But I'm like, well, who's the big entertainment? So Telemiracle will kick off just after 6 o'clock on Saturday night. Telemiracle 49. I can only imagine what they're going to plan for Telemiracle 50, which is going to be next year. We started the show earlier today. Guys, how much time do we got left? We started the show earlier today. A lot of people, there's Gretzky derangement syndrome, and people want Wayne canceled because they think he's un-Canadian anymore. With everything that's gone on, not only with the Four Nations last week and with him being friends with the President of the United States and all of that. And so people were off the deep end. So we asked you on the Prairie Land Rentals text line, 306-936-6262, what you're thinking. This Gretzky thing, just leave it alone. Wayne's done more for Canada and hockey than anybody else ever will. I think he's earned a right to, and a pass to do whatever he'd like to nowadays. And Wayne lives in the States, by the way. He is legally entitled to vote in the American elections. This isn't a thing. Some people are saying leave Wayne alone. Other people saying Wayne's now dead to them. I don't know. Wayne did more for this country just as an ambassador alone. Forget hockey. Like when you say Canada, people think Wayne Gretzky. All right. 3 games in the NHL last night. The Jets won their 11th in a row, 4-1. Colorado beat Jersey, and Vancouver with a win, now sneaking into that final playoff spot. There's 12 games tonight. We'll get into that in a bit. Coming up after the top of the hour, Dave Thomas, the voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, will join the show. It's the all-new Sports Cage, streaming at sportscage.com, and on the radio at 620 CKRM. Some breaking news to start hour 2 of the show. Todd Johnson and the University of Regina Cougars, the men's hockey club, have mutually agreed to part ways. So Todd Johnson, as of this afternoon, and the U of R Cougars mutually agreed to part ways. As the details roll in, we'll pass them along to you. It's hour 2 of the show. It's Maz in for Barney. Thanks for being part of it. You want to be part of this? Prairie Land Rentals text line 306-936-6262. If you text the word Rush along with your name to that number, you can win tickets to go watch the Roughnecks play this weekend. Not the Roughnecks, the Saskatchewan Rush. They're taking on the Buffalo Bandits at Sass Place on Saturday night. It's a first place showdown. We've got tickets to give away. Colson will hand those out before the end of the show. So text the word Rush along with your name, text line, and then that's all you got to do. We had Glen Suitor in hour 1. He's still in Europe. He was sightseeing and he saw the Statue of David. If you missed that interview, you can catch the podcast at sportscage.com. All right, let's bring him on. I feel like we haven't connected in ages. I don't even know what Dave Thomas looks like anymore. He was on vacation. I think he was in the States. Let's try and get the voice of the Saskatchewan. There he is, Dave Thomas, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, first off, good to see you. How was vacay? Where were you?
We were down just outside Phoenix, Arizona. We took in a little golf for a week and lost a lot of golf balls, had a lot of laughs, and just enjoyed some summertime heat when it was minus 40 back at home. And no, my wife did not accompany us on the trip, and no, I have not lived that down.
First off, because we live in a woke mob culture, to say that in this crisis here back home, you went on vacation to America, Dave? What? This is breaking news. I'm kidding. Listen, there's a lot of dumb things being said in the media these days. That's one of them. So how awesome was it? So when it was minus 39 here and minus 51 with the wind chill, how warm was it in Phoenix that day?
We teed off at plus 25 that afternoon.
Nice. Now,
but here's a funny thing with everything that is going on between the two countries. And I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here. When you look at the Four Nations face-off, right? So we were right in the heart, in the middle of it, right? So we arrived that night on the Saturday night. The U.S. defeated Canada. So, of course, the Americans were feeling pretty good. It was a rough and tumble game. It was everything. And hockey was the talk in Phoenix, Arizona. And keep in mind, they had an NHL team for a few years. And I was told that hockey had never been talked about like that in those parts before. Mm-hmm. And it was cool. We were actually on the tarmac when McDavid scored that gold medal winning goal, getting set to fly back into Canada last Thursday. So our plane erupted in cheers. It was something else. And one of those moments, right? Do you remember where you were when? Well, we were sitting on the tarmac and just about to take off as the flight attendants were quite boisterous in their opposition to people still having their phones on to stream the overtime game.
So I now don't know what airline you were flying. Did they break out, if it was a Canadian airline, did they buy a round for everybody? Did they bring out the drink cart in celebration to be like, have at her, man? You want a midi bottle of vodka and a Diet Coke? Yes, it's on the house. Thank you.
No drink cart, but what was funny, so the plane erupts, right? So obviously the pilots are completely oblivious to what's going on, right? They've got other things on their mind, hard to believe, right? So the plane goes nuts in the fact that the goal has just been scored and we make our turn onto the runway. And so the flight attendants are going nuts. They're like, everybody get your phone off. It's got to be in airplane mode, blah, blah, blah. So that's happening. So we get up and we're in the air for about 15, maybe 25 minutes. And all of a sudden the pilot comes on and she says, hey, just for everybody who wants to know what the score is, Canada won in overtime. And everyone was like, yeah, we know.
Oh, Dave, you could have made your section around you erupt if you would have broke out. Thanks, Captain Obvious. Because she's the captain of the flight, right? Nice.
Well played.
I've always wondered, because plenty of planes have flown, there's always that one person that never puts their phone in airplane mode. And now that there's Wi-Fi on planes, and you're using it the whole time, can we just get over that charade? Like, and the other thing too, my seat being reclined probably wouldn't be the determining factor if something would happen, if someone's seat was reclined. Because how far are seats reclining these days, Dave? Because you feel, and you do feel bad nowadays on planes when you do recline your seat, but it really actually doesn't go all that far back.
No, that's true. Very true. But you know what? With family members in the airline industry, I am going to plead the fifth on this. I have no idea whether or not airplane mode actually affects the airplane.
And you know that what the answer is. So let's rewind to the start of this. How did you end up going on vacation without your wife? Like, how does that even happen?
She's not a golfer. So she said, you guys go and enjoy golf. So we went. So it was great.
But that, Dave, that's like when they say, don't get me anything for Christmas.
Well,
bold lie. That's a trap. They set the trap, like, go without me?
Okay. Barney is going to have a field day with this, but I didn't even bring them back anything from the States, like not a hoodie or anything that says Arizona on it, nothing. Like I figured out, what do you need anything for? And that was a bad mistake because we did leave the day after Valentine's, right? So that one's on me.
A lot of problems in this country, and you're adding to them, Dave. Like don't just go without me. No, not at all. Yeah. So we haven't had a chance to talk What have you made of the riders in free agency? Because there was a lot of excitement. There was Hamilton and Edmonton being flashy and splashy everywhere and signing every free agent in North America, it seems. And then the riders just quietly going about doing their business. Not a lot of fanfare, just plugging some holes, bringing some people in, a little continuity.
Yeah, that's the key word, isn't it? Continuity, and the fact that the team liked the building blocks and the foundation that they put in place last year. And so they wanted to go ahead and augment a couple of opportunities that were out there. Tavon Campbell probably being the main one, and bringing another national starter potentially to the secondary. So you adjust your ratio that way, and then you put Sean McEwen in at center. So those are some big time opportunities that the Riders had to upgrade from where they believed they were at. And then everyone remains the same. So, you know, you look at Trevor Harris. He told me at one point last season the mind-boggling number of different offensive coordinators that he's had over the years, and the number that he had in a short span in time. And you remember Nathan Rourke when he came back, you know, the astronomical number of coordinators that he had worked with over the previous years and just couldn't build any continuity. Well, now Trevor Harris has that opportunity with a Mark Mueller offense, with the personnel that are around him, with a solid offensive line that the Riders did a sensational job on last year in plugging gaps with. And then the defense looks like they're going to take another step forward. They were one of the top run defenses in the entire league all year long. The pass defense gave up some yards, and Luke Mullender was under the impression that they just needed to find a pressure package or a way that they could go ahead and get quarterbacks uncomfortable. So now you go ahead and add some of the athletes that they put in along the defensive line, couple that with the linebackers, and then, of course, Roland Milligan Jr., who was outstanding all year long last year, as you could see, of course, in our minds, a candidate for the MOP award. You put that together, it's a pretty solid group that Jeremy O'Day and the rest of the football operations team has assembled.
As we sit here in late February, and there's a lot of people declaring victory in free agency, if you're a fan of your team, you always think, unless you're the Stamps, that you've done outstanding work. No, actually, I shouldn't say that. The Stamps this year, I think they signed 11 players, which I think is the most they've ever done in the past 2 decades, because they normally sign 3 or 4. But once the season is said and done, because you can't control injuries, doesn't matter who you sign, someone, or there will be teams bitten by the injury bug, and it seems to have been the Riders the past X amount of years. Last year, they seemed to weather it better than anybody else, but it all kind of has to come together. And when we talked to Trevor Harris on Friday, and who's on a new diet, by the way, it's not straight carnivore. There is some fruit in there, which I'm like, because normally carnivore is just carnivore, animal-based. Look it up. This good book. Sean Baker is a surgeon. Anyways, with him, Sean McEwen, there's going to be a brand new center. There is all of that, and how they can kind of hit the ground running, where someone like Edmonton with all those new faces, they got to kind of get to do the, hi, who are ya? Don't know ya. Where the Riders, we talked about, like, as soon as you get to training camp, will every rep matter or be important? He said yes, because it's a continuation. It's not a brand new learning situation. And and then after the interview, about 2 hours later, I'm like, yeah, if the Riders can, it's funny. Those wins early are so important, because the ones in late October and November, Dave, you know this, are so hard to get. If you can stack wins early to help you later on down the road, because I don't know, do you think that the home field advantage in the West Final is going to be as big as it ever will be, especially with the Grey Cup being in Winnipeg this year?
I've been fortunate enough to be in a lot of places broadcasting a lot of different sports. And I can tell you from my mind, I have never heard anything louder than what Winnipeg Stadium was during the West Final last year. And if you can have that game at Mosaic Stadium, I'm not saying the outcome would be reversed. I have no idea. No one ever will know that idea. But boy, the way that crowd was able to go ahead and create momentum for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers that they were able to build upon early, having that West Final at home, absolutely huge advantage if you're the Saskatchewan Roughriders or any team. And so, yeah, exactly what you said. Stacking wins early is going to be paramount. And there's 2 things that you can't fake, I believe, in sports. One is talent. You can't fake talent. Talent will always have talent. And the other thing that cannot be faked is chemistry. And that was the one thing that was very apparent to me with the Saskatchewan Roughriders last year, was their chemistry, because there was a bond that was created very early on in training camp. And the true test came during that 7-game winless streak. And Nobody had anything dissenting to say. Everybody stuck together. And like I say, the two things you can't fake, talent and, of course, whether or not you care and have that team chemistry. And the Riders had both last year.
Dave Thomas is joining us on the Western Pizza Guest Hotline, and Trevor Harris said that as well. He goes, we got a bunch of dudes that like each other. And Charleston said last week, and Darian said it, like, when you have guys that actually like each other, not to say that those guys in Edmonton who all showed up for a lot of money can't and won't get along, but sometimes those guys want the ball. There's only one ball to go around. So can you keep everybody happy? Because it's bought. It's not organic. Looks like in the way that the Riders are doing this, it's organic. And I think that only lends in our favor. And the other thing, too, love or hate Winnipeg, for whatever they've been able to do, get to 4 straight Grey Cups. They've had some chemistry with the guys that have been there. And you can tell at times how important that is. Because last year when they were 0-4, they didn't panic. And then look, by the end of the season, it all came around. Now, it may be a little different this year. They did lose some talent. But then I was thinking, a healthy Dalton Schoen makes a huge difference, I think. Yeah, you lose Kenny Lawler. They'll find other wide receivers. But, you know, a healthy Dalton Schoen, which they didn't have. So I know everyone's trying to rack up to be like, we're looking at the schedule now to be like, well, where can we? It's hard. Like, I don't know where those free spots are now.
No, in a 9-team league in February, if you start to suggest that there are free spots and free spaces on your schedule, you're probably out there a little bit, because there's going to be a lot of changes between now. The draft is going to have an impact on who is doing what and who has what. And then there's injuries, right? You can't predict that kind of thing. So yes, there's teams that maybe look like they were a little quieter than others, like the Toronto Argonauts. They won the Grey Cup. And they lost a big chunk of players. Like, there's a lot of talent that left the Toronto Argonaut roster, but still, I don't have any doubt that they're going to be competitive and a very good team in 2025. So suggesting that anybody is going to be weaker than anything before we see the teams actually take the field, there's a lot of time between now and May when the preseason gets going.
So this CFL Invitational Combine tomorrow, this is basically a chance for some people that are on the outside or potentially on the bubble to get an invite to the CFL official combine, which is in Regina in the 3rd week of March. So locally, who are some of the guys that are going to be competing tomorrow for a shot at this?
Well, a couple of Regina Rams are going to be taking part. The one that's intriguing to me is the receiver Sokol, and he joined the Rams from the junior ranks. He was very dominant there, and I thought he had a solid campaign last year as he made the most of the time and the opportunities that he got. The Regina Rams, of course, in the postseason, you'll recall, were primarily a running team, right? They found a way to grind that ball on the ground, and they stuck to it, and I'm not faulting anybody for it. That's just the way they were. So it's going to be interesting to see how he performs. The other one is the University of Saskatchewan Husky running back Riker Frank. Now, he's actually the boldest graduate from Regina, and this kid's a smart cookie. Like, he is an engineering student, which, again, he's taking full course load. Like, there's no, I'm doing my degree over 7 years with that young man. He's gone ahead taking a full course load. He's been recognized academically. He's been recognized for the things that he does in the community. He's just an all-around good person, right? So he's gifted athletically. He is a good guy. The only knock on him might be his size a little bit, as he's a little bit short. But again, what he's able to do in carrying the football, and what I believe is probably one thing you definitely need to see from a Canadian running back, is his ability to read the blocking scheme. He can do that, and he's done that with the University of Saskatchewan Huskies for a number of years. So those are two of the 3 young men from Saskatchewan universities that are going to be taking part at the University of Waterloo tomorrow, looking to get their opportunity to come to Regina late March for the CFL Combine.
I think probably one of the things, like for Riker, it's that ability, to know how to pick up blocks and read. But then the other part too is, if you're going to be making the club, he probably hasn't had to play him in a while because he's been one of the better players, is the ability to go back and play special teams, because you're not coming in and taking AJ Ouellette's job. If you're going to be making a roster and you're a backup Canadian running back, that means you're probably going to be on all 3 special teams. But you probably haven't had to play those in a long time because you've been the best guy on your squad forever. So that's probably one of the things that the coaches and GMs really have to look at to be like, yeah, that's his primary position. All right, what's he like on punt return?
Well, and that's the catch-22 right there, the risk and reward for playing special teams at the U Sports level. Two examples come to mind. Nicholas Daly, dominant defensive end when he was with the Saskatchewan Huskies. Of course, he played in other spots around Western Canada growing up and developing his football game. But he said to the coaches, okay, I need to play some special teams. I want to stand out. I want to get noticed. I would like to take my game to the next level. So the Huskies coaches, okay, sure, go ahead. Worked out well for him. He was drafted by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, in part because they were able to see what he did on special teams. Flip that coin, and there's the risk side of that. Last year's draft selection for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Nick Wiebe, right? He asked to play special teams from his linebacker spot and blew out his knee against the University of Alberta. So risk reward if you're an athlete. Yeah, I'm a really good linebacker, but I do want to show what I can do on special teams, and something like that can happen.
We had Nick Daly on last week. He's the new director of football at Notre Dame. And he's just so excited. I asked him, do you already have the very first defensive call in your head mapped out for whatever the first snap is going to be next year? He's like, no, he said he was thinking about it or whatever. You just tell he loves football, super excited, a Leopoldus grad, coming from a football family, nothing but excellence. And he talks about what they're going to do with that 9-man squad there and how they're going to grow this. And then the powerhouse hockey school that is Notre Dame could watch out. The powerhouse football program from Notre Dame looks like it's on its way. As we kind of look around, there's the there he is right there. Just don't check his Wikipedia. His hair is he shaved all his hair off. He looks completely different. He looks like a respectable collared shirt wearing football kind of coach. Shy. He's got a sub for grade 9 science. It looks like he's all cleaned up, respectable. As we're talking here, there's prospects and all that. When it comes to the draft, there's always those people. When it comes to the CFL, you always take an offensive lineman in that first round if you have a first round picker. Is it going to be that cut and dry for the Riders? Do we go defense? To me, if we could pick up like Forlane Ormalade is like he's a stalwart on a defensive line, not Canadian, but like, do we go D-line this time? Like someone that could potentially be a long-term solution, Canadian, whether that's D tackle or D end, because, like a Jake Serezna or a Matthew Betts, like these guys that just play and keep paying dividends. Do you see the Riders potentially going down that path?
I don't know that they'll select positionally. I think it's definitely going to be the best athlete available that the Riders believe will be available to play for them at some point. If you look at the track record of Jeremy O'Day, I would suggest that that's what he's done. Last year, reading between the lines, right, drafted an offensive lineman. Probably not going to see him for a while yet, at very least. But having said that, I believe that the football operations staff with the Saskatchewan Roughriders last year was very confident in the roster that they had built and been able to put together. So when they went into the draft, they had that luxury. Okay, we can go ahead and we can find the best player that we feel will fit our needs today, tomorrow, and into the future. So you take the gamble on the offensive lineman, then you go with the linebacker, of course, in Nick Wiebe. Along the way, you've got Del Duncan Busby that's added. You've got Deshaun Mims that's added as far as receivers go. And then a Joe shows up in the 7th round. So to me, I think it's going to be that combination of who is available and what is going to be the best athlete for us and the best fit in our room, because there's a lot more than just the physical testing at the combine, right? There's the interview process. There's the talking with previous coaches, former teammates, so on and so forth. It is a small connected world I'm starting to learn in football, because once you start to meet a person, they probably know 2 other people that and then it just networks from there. So just like the real world, the network of football is a real thing. And I truly believe that that's the path that the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and I wouldn't be surprised if most organizations say the same thing. Yeah, it'd be great if we could get a player in XYZ spot, but if we can find an athlete that is going to fit into our chemistry, our foundation, and our structure, that's where we're going to go.
Real quick before we take a break, and you're going to come back, and we're going to talk to Matt Scott, who's the head coach of Fort Knox, the Fort Capel PJHL team. The draft this year, according to the experts, strong, not strong.
I've actually heard that it is a stronger, deeper draft this year, is what I've been told by a couple of people. But again, that's just what I've been told. It could be entirely the opposite, because drafts are kind of like drafting when I do it for hockey or my football pool. They're always a pick 'em.
Alrighty. All right. So Dave's going to hang with us. We're going to take a break. This is the Sports Cage. We're streaming on our YouTube channel at sportscage.com and on the radio 620 CKRM. Grapefruit League Baseball. Jays lose. Dave, the Jays lose. That's all they've been doing is putting up L's, whether it's the free agents or on the field. They lose to the Orioles today, 11-8 down in Florida. You ever been to a spring training game in Florida?
I've never been to a spring training game. It's always on a bucket list for me to do. I love going to a Major League Baseball game any chance I get, though. I really enjoy it.
My sister and her husband live in Sarasota, Florida, and I remember being down there. And the Chicago White Sox, their training facility is not far from where they live. I remember going to a couple of games. I think it was maybe $5 to get in. This was years ago. Just going there and just sitting. You're basically going to sit in suntan or whatever and you know this. Baseball fans are a very diverse crowd, from like the youngest of young kids to the oldest of the old people who you think shouldn't be sitting out in the sun for 3.5 hours, and everybody in between. I don't know about the Jays this year. Could be a long season. Hey, the Sports Cage on Thursdays is brought to you by Canadian Brewhouse. It's pasta and uncorked Thursdays. Pasta dishes are just $11.99. 9-ounce glasses of wine for the price of $6. And if you like Bud and Bud Light, you can get tankards for just $1 off. That's at the Canadian Brewhouse, 2 locations in Regina and 1 in Moose Jaw. Tomorrow night, the Prairie Junior Hockey League playoffs will kick off in Fort Capel. The Assiniboia Southern Rebels have the task of taking on Fort Knox. Face-off will be at 7:30. Joining us on the Western Pizza guest hotline is head coach Matt Scott. Matt, thanks for taking some time. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
No, not bad. So you finished the regular season with a 31-6 record. You were dominant in the South. Let's go back to the very first skate back in the fall. Did you know you may have something special here after seeing some of the guys that were out there on the ice trying out for the team this year?
You know what? When Jared and I met earlier, he'd thrown a list of players together that he kind of wanted to make sure that he brought in. And when we kind of diagnosed everything, we looked at different guys, and we just said, hey, the group that we have right now, even though it's one kind of similar to the group that they had last year, we said we know that we could do some pretty good things with these guys. So when we decided that we were going to keep the group that we had last year, we realized we needed to do one thing, that was build culture. I think the most important thing for us was to have a culture that our group could feel comfortable being around, and that includes the way that Jared put a really, really good team together for us. So from skate and from day one, I think we knew that we were going to be a successful team. Do I want to say we knew that we'd only lose 5 or 6 games? No, but we'll definitely take it.
Coach, when you look at your roster, it's Dave Thomas, by the way. When you look at the roster that you and Jared Williams assembled, your top 3 scorers, for example, have all been together 2 to 3 years at the very least. So what does that continuity bring? Is it systems and structure that you're able to build upon earlier, or is it just that whole atmosphere in the dressing room?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a little bit of both, actually. You know what, the atmosphere and the culture thing is really big. Our leadership group that we put together and that we had our guys vote for, they've done a phenomenal job with each other inside the room. And you know what, that just translates to the way that those 3 guys work on the ice. They're very reliant on one another, and they're very aware of where each other is going to be on the ice. And I mean, it's brought a lot of success to them individually, but it's also brought a lot of success to our group because the rest of our guys see that, and it translates. It translates throughout the rest of the team, and we've had a lot of success just based off of what our veteran group has been able to do.
We're chatting with Matt Scott. He's the head coach of Fort Knox and Fort Capel Prairie Junior Hockey League on the Western Pizza Guest Hotline. Matt, even growing up, having buddies in high school and as we got older, Junior B rosters were always the most interesting collection of guys because for whatever reason, they were on a Junior B team. There were guys that were good enough to play in the Western Hockey League, but for whatever reason, they were Junior B. There were other guys that could have been playing Junior A. They end up on Junior B. Some guys wanted to go to school. Some guys wanted to work. Is that part of it? What keeps you interested? Because you've been coaching for a long time, the personalities and the different backgrounds and stories that these guys show up with every season?
Well, absolutely. It's funny when people talk about the league or the way people used to talk about the league. There used to be this almost like a stigma to the league that it was just Junior B. And then when you get into the league and you realize there's some actually really, really good players that play in this league. And so myself, Jared, Colton, Spencer, Andrew, Derek, our whole staff, at the very start of the year, we knew we wanted to be successful, but our job is also to graduate guys to the next level. The guys that want to play at the next level, we want them to go and we want them to play. So when we have a group of guys and a group of young guys that are all wanting to make the step and make the jump to the next level, it makes our job that much easier, and it makes it a lot of fun to coach.
So, Coach, tell me a little bit about the process that you go through in preparing your hockey team, just building upon that. You know, I've had the opportunity to help out with the Gold Rush Lotto there in Fort Knox for years and years and years. And I know that there's kids on the team that are going to school at university. There's other guys that work jobs. There's guys that travel in for practices and games. It's not like, other teams where perhaps everybody stays in billets together and is around everyone 24/7 and you practice 6 times, 5 times a week. How have you gone ahead and developed your structure for preparing your team for the success you've had?
Well, right off that, we practice twice a week. We practice Tuesdays and Thursdays, which it never seems like it's enough. But like you said, we only have roughly 10 guys that are staying within Fort Capel, guys that are working in Fort, guys that are from Fort, and the rest of our guys travel from kind of Regina and beyond who are going to school or working. So it's extremely difficult for us to find any more time to get the entire group on the ice at the same time. So what we made sure we did was we made sure that when we set our practice schedule and we just had our entire group, we just said, look, when we have practice, we need you guys here, because when you guys are all here, we're able to work on the things that we need to do to improve as a hockey club. And our guys bought into it. We had a little bit of trouble there with all that weather about a month ago. It felt like we hadn't practiced in about a month as a complete group. And it showed. I mean, that's when we went through kind of probably the most difficult part of our season as far as some internal struggles we were having. But we've been able to have a few really, really good practices here before playoffs. And we're hoping that the work that we put in here in the last 2 weeks or so will pay off starting tomorrow.
All right, so the PJHL playoffs kick off this weekend. The Saskatoon Royals are going to take on the Saskatoon Quakers. The Saskatoon Wesleys are either going to play the PA Timberjacks or the Dial Chiefs. There's one more game to decide who will play there. The Pilot Butte Storm will take on the Regina Capitals Saturday, 7:45 face-off. And tomorrow night, the Assiniboia Southern Rebels come to Fort Knox. The rink's going to be crazy in Fort Capel to face off against you guys. The Assiniboia Southern Rebels, when you're talking to the team tomorrow night, what's the message got to be? Why can we not take Assiniboia lightly? What do they do well that you're going to have to defend against?
You know what? From the start of the year till now, Paul Tendler and that group, they've done a really good job at making sure that they've built a successful team. If you look at their record over the last half of the year, they've got one of the better records in the league, and it shows. I mean, they've got a really, really dangerous group when it comes to their top 6 forwards, and they've got a really, really good back end when it comes to their top 3 guys. And their goaltender can keep them in any game. I mean, we should know we moved them there midway through the year. For us, it's taking care of the middle of the ice. If we give them the middle of the ice, they're dangerous and they're going to make us pay. So we've got to make sure we keep them on the outside, and everything we do is we lock down inside the dots. If we can lock down inside the dots, I think we're going to be in really good shape. But leave no doubt, and our group knows that we can't take them lightly. And every shift that we take, we have to make sure that we do all the little details right. Because if we lapse in any judgment, or if we make any type of mistake, they're going to make us pay. And playoff hockey is all about, right, jumping on those opportunities, and we can't allow them to have any opportunities.
Kind of a two-part question for you, Coach, real quick. Obviously, playing in Fort Knox, I've been there. I've been to your games. That's a heck of an atmosphere that I'm sure is going to give you a boost, and probably the hometown kid in Riverbanks feels that each and every time you're on the ice. What does that crowd and atmosphere do for your club, and maybe the hometown kid in particular?
You know what, tomorrow it's going to be exciting tomorrow. I mean, starting tomorrow at 5 o'clock is the Fort Qu'Appelle Winter Festival. And so we're hoping that with the Winter Festival that's happening at the rink, and with some free public skating and some things that are going on for some families, that translates and that people really, really gravitate into the rink for our game. A guy like Banksy, you know what, as a 20-year-old guy, as a guy who's broken the record for the most games played, he's excited. He's such a great leader for our group, especially because he's a local kid. He understands what this team means to the community, and he makes sure that the rest of the team understands that it's important. It's important for our community. It's important for this group, for this team, to do the things that we've done this year, because we put the work in, and we want the community to feel like they have something that they can be proud of. And so starting tomorrow, we're hoping that we can give our community, our fans, and even our local players a reason to say that they're proud to be members of the Fort Knox.
All right. Well, Coach, we thank you for your time. The Fort Winter Festival kicks off at 5. So let's see. Beer gardens at 5, game at 7:30, and then it says that there's a polar bear dip and then fireworks. So maybe that's a plan. We just need all 4 of those things to we need a win, and then the polar bear dip won't be as cold, and then the fireworks will be that much better to wrap up the night. Hey, thanks for making time for us. Best of luck. And we're going to be following along, and we may have you back on as we get further and further into the playoffs. So thanks for taking some time for us. We appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Right.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. All right, we're going to take a break. This is the Sports Cage. It's brought to you by Access Communications, trusted in rural Saskatchewan for internet, TV, and home security. Dave, you got anywhere to be? We'll come back. We're going to talk. We got some Briar to talk about. You've been sunning yourself in Phoenix, and we've been heavily involved in curling here. Now that we've come off the Scotties, we got to get ready for the Briar tomorrow and this double Saskatchewan conundrum that we're going to have to tackle. We'll do that next on the all-new Sports Cage on 620 CKRM. Arash Madani is going to join the show after 5 o'clock. Thanks to Matt Scott, head coach of Fort Knox. The Prairie Junior Hockey League playoffs will get rolling tomorrow night. So, Dave, while you were on vacation, we were heavy into discussing the Scotties Tournament of Hearts and how kind of unfair the setup is now with 18 teams involved, including Nancy Martin and her Saskatchewan rink. 5-3, pretty good. But when you're in Rachel Holman's pool and she's 8-0, not a lot of chance to make it the playoffs. But if you were in the other pool, 5-3, Sharky and I were chatting last week that if there's 18 teams involved, 10 should make the playoffs. 6 is not enough. Three from each side. Like, you lose your first 2 games, you're out.
Go if you've got 10 teams in the playoffs.
No.
Like, this is a 1 week thing, man.
Okay, so those games in the round robin, less of those, but when you do start the playoffs, like, there's just more teams that have a chance to go on and win. Because if you lost your first 2 games, there was almost no chance you would be able to make that up and make the playoffs. And with the page system of, okay, you can win, but you can lose, but then you can lose, you can win. If they just went to straight knockout, you could get some business done pretty quick if you had that many teams make the playoffs.
I see what you're saying. Well, there is a lot of curling going on, by the way. Of course, in Moose Jaw, the Provincial Masters Championship kicked off earlier today at 11 o'clock was the first draw there this morning. The U Sports Championship continues in Lethbridge. The U of R defending champions, the Josh Bryden team, unfortunately, they just had a tough start. They were 1-4, so have been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. We'll have to see what Chloe Johnston does today to see if she can get in. So curling abound, and then there's that little Briar thing happening in Kelowna starting Friday.
Well, it's so funny. So last year in Regina, the Briar, we were there every day. It was a ton of fun. People having a great time. But there was only one Saskatchewan team that was trying to break the 1980 Rick Folk curse. This year, 2 teams. Team Saskatchewan, Kleider. Team Saskatchewan, McEwen. Saturday, Mike McEwen takes on Tyler Smith from PEI. Then Ryland Kleider takes on Owen Purcell from Nova Scotia. Now, when I jumped ahead into the schedule, Wednesday, March 5th, the Sasky Showdown, Kleider McEwen. Can they just both win? Is there any way that they both can win?
Let's have a tie. We've seen it happen in football.
Oh, God. Speaking of, forget winning free agency. You also got to deal with the command center. So Kleider and McEwen, here's hoping. Could you imagine here? And the exciting part will be if they both have a chance to make the playoffs, because the 1980 and not winning a Briar since in such a curling rich province, you'd think, man, maybe we got as good a shot at any with 2 teams.
Well, this year is so tough for that Mike McEwen rink. They've been off for 6 weeks, right? They didn't have to curl in provincials. They got the buy-in. And of course, the teams that are still trying to qualify don't play any other events. So it's kind of a dark period on the calendar. So they went on a vacation south of the border with their families, took some time off, and then have slowly started to ramp up their preparation for Friday. So they didn't have to compete to get in. We'll see what that does for them if they're a rested team going in or if they're a rusty team going in.
Think Kevin Cooey has forgot how to curl since the last time he took the ice? Hopefully.
No,
maybe. No, not a chance. No. The Montana's Briar is in Kelowna, and that will kick off tomorrow. And then it's wait and see time. So no action for the teams tomorrow. Both rinks are in action on Saturday. McEwen and Kleider taking on PEI in Nova Scotia. All right, time to take a break. Thanks, Mr. Thomas. Dave Thomas, voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, joining us here on the all-new SportsCage. When we come back, Arash Madani, the Blue Jays. It could be a long season, Jays fans, and Arash has got a little insight into things that may be unraveling slowly, and it's only spring training. We'll check in with Arash in just a couple of minutes. The SportsCage continues on 620 CKRM. Final hour of the show for this Thursday, February 27th. It was a little crazy windy today. It's going to get even crazy windier tonight, gusting anywhere from 50 to 70 an hour. It's always interesting when you can see the recycling and garbage bins being blown over in back alleys and front lanes, and then whoever owns those doesn't decide to pick them up, and then they're just kind of out there in the street for the kids to play with, and it's melting. It's Maz in for Barney. We're going to check in with Arash Madani here in a couple of minutes. He's traveling today. The Blue Jays are a month away from opening day, and apparently there's already problems. Arash will get the latest. So
the real
busy
question
night in the
I
NHL.
have is, you let your kids play with recycling and garbage bins?
No, I'm saying neighborhood kids do. If I could get my kids to take out the garbage or the recycling, that would be a minor miracle in this house. All right? They live in an all-inclusive resort. All meals, all laundry, bedding, everything done for them. Grandmother takes them shopping. They get Slurpees. They don't do anything. Whose fault is that? Squarely on myself and my wife. Nobody else to blame. That's a failure on our part.
That sounds like quite the socialist paradise.
All I'm hearing is that your children are raccoons that play in the trash all the time.
Listen, man bun. Listen, well, probably, and if they were, the way it sounds is, if they were to make a mess and play in the trash and get it all over the street, I would have to go out there and clean it up, because that would be out of their purview to go back and do that. I still remember as a kid.
You're really speaking to my heart, though, with all the trash bins blown over and stuff. My place, has a back alley, and it is really bad this winter where like there's just gigantic snow mounds, and there's very specific spots where the snow melted where the trash bins go, and they will like slot right into the snow, but somehow they still get blown over. It's like, I don't know how, and it's so hard to drive down that back alley, but yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is sometimes, you know, when the trucks come along, I've seen it before where sometimes they try and set them down gently, but they end up falling over. But then I'm thinking, I was driving one of those trucks and I was having a bad day, I'd make sure every one of those things was laying on its side and make that somebody else's problem. Hey, listen, we've all been there, right? We've all had those things, and if you drive one of those trucks, that's how you get even with the world. All right?
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
To each their own.
Yeah, fair enough.
I see where your kids learn their raccoon tendencies to knocking over trash cans and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, that would also mean that they would go outside in cold winter weather, and they don't do that either. Listen, if you can't be safe and warm on the couch with an iPad, really, are you a kid in 2025?
I guess not, eh?
That sounds
Did
like
you know
a
that
kid
there's
2020 as well?
Yeah. Colson, you're lazy. 12 games in the NHL tonight. Did you see? Oh no, go ahead, Curtis.
Oh, I was gonna say, have you ever checked out those like sensory videos on like iPads that kids watch nowadays? They're like surprisingly like soothing, and like you could watch them for a while. Just the fruit dancing. It's really good.
I don't think there's any.
Lately the youngest one's been watching a lot of
about that.
Yeah, lately there's been a lot of we're watching Blippi. This guy named Blippi on Netflix. I think it's on Netflix. Yeah, it's not Disney Plus. We're watching a lot of Blippi these days.
Yeah, I'll find you some sensory fruit. Don't worry.
All right. 12 games in the NHL tonight. The Calgary Flames are in Tampa Bay to take on the Lightning. And you know who else is in Tampa Bay? Our guy Eric Francis, who we have on Mondays and Wednesdays. We go inside the NHL for Southie Mainline Chrysler. And we have a picture of Eric earlier today at the Marriott, suntanning by the pool. Curtis, do we have that? This sent in by a listener. There he is. There's Eric today, sunning himself. So it's so funny. About 10 minutes ago, I texted Eric because the game's going to be, I think, face-offs in less than an hour. So I texted him today. I said, hey, I'm like, did you go golfing? And what was the name of the course? And he's like, how dare you? I'm down here working. And I'm like, okay. And by the way, what was the name of the course? He golfed Sagewood today. So Eric is enjoying the Flames' killer 6-game road trip, and apparently his golf game is benefiting because of the Flames' rigorous schedule. They're on to Miami after this. The Islanders taking on Boston tonight, Columbus at Detroit. Now, those are the two wild card teams in the East, so this is like a 4-pointer. Todd McClellan, Sasky guy, done some great work taking over the Wings when they were a dumpster fire. But Columbus has played some inspired hockey. And did you guys see that Johnny Gaudreau's mom, is on the mom's trip with the rest of the Columbus moms and players as a nice gesture for the team? Like how, although probably at times emotional and maybe a little painful, but what a nice gesture from the Blue Jackets to invite Johnny's mom along. And that's just all class.
That's a very good gesture.
Yeah. And that's the one thing about the Americans not winning last Thursday. If they would have won for Johnny, like I would have been okay either way. Yes, and Team Canada, all that, but they were playing for something. And that was a good something, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Let's see. You've got San Jose and Montreal. Somebody asked the question, if you had to start a franchise today, Macklin Celebrini or Connor Bedard, with the season that Bedard's having, I would take Macklin Celebrini. Do we have this graphic? Curtis, do you want to throw that up? In the first 57 games of the season, Connor Bedard has had 36 different line combinations. That poor kid.
Yeah,
and just look at this. Look at the look on his face. That's not fun.
Yeah, that kind of speaks against your point, though. Like, yeah, you can't argue whether or not Celebrini's or Bedard is better right now because they're still so early into their career. But Bedard hasn't had a chance to build any continuity or chemistry with anybody because everything just keeps getting shuffled around. Like, when he played for the Pats, they shuffled the lines a lot because that was John Paddock's style, was putting out whoever's hot right? But the whole team kind of had chemistry, and realistically, you were only shuffling the top 2 lines around a bit, right? So you'd have chemistry with your 5 other forwards. There's no way he has had any opportunity to get any chemistry with any guys in those top 6.
Yeah, I mean, even when he played with Taylor Hall, and Taylor Hall looked disinterested at times. And it's not that Taylor Hall's a bad hockey player, but they need to go and find him or buy him a line mate that he play, like a Sid and Malkin situation, or somebody like a Rantanen and a McKinnon, and lock that down long term and let those guys, and then you can always fill in that third, because Eric has said, and anybody we've had on has said, it's not about a trio, it's always about a duo. Like McDavid and Draisaitl, you get that locked down and you can build the rest of the team. I feel bad for Bedard because Chicago's a dumpster fire, and the players they did bring in haven't panned out.
Yeah.
Probably going to go through a few more coaches. But yeah, he just doesn't look like he's having a lot of fun. St. Louis is at Washington, Buffalo at Carolina. Mikko Rantanen, I wish he would just come out and say, I'm not re-signing. I'm not signing here, guys. You can trade me away. Trade deadline is next Friday, by the way. Do you think he re-signs Coulson?
I don't know. I was trying to remember his name. You think he'd be a good line mate for Bedard? I don't know.
Probably. And the Blackhawks have the cap space.
Exactly. And at this point, it's something. And like, is it the best of a worst situation? Maybe. But yeah, I don't know. If he's unhappy, I don't see him re-signing, because I don't think they'll want to pay him.
Well, and apparently they made an offer and it's worth over $100 million. But the other thing too is, if you don't want to be there, now he's already won a cup, so now he's about getting paid, and you can't blame him. But maybe he just decides, I'll go back to Colorado and I'll take a little less. I want to play with Nathan McKinnon, because obviously with Nathan McKinnon feeding you the puck, or vice versa, your stats look better. Yep. It's not the same. In Carolina, they don't play run and gun. They play defense. In Colorado, they could freewheel, and they were okay with that. St. Louis is at Washington. Edmonton's at Florida. What's wrong with the Edmonton Oilers? Does Connor McDavid have the Four Nations hangover? Because they have not been the same since he's been back. Is it time to panic in Oiler Nation? Do they need a goalie? It's
always time to panic in Oiler Nation.
So there's been a lot of talk about John Gibson potentially from the Anaheim Ducks, and them trading. Give Stuart Skinner backup to make a good 1-2 combination. I don't know. Is it defense, forward depth, or goaltending that's the problem in Edmonton? I don't know. Philly at Pittsburgh, Winnipeg at Nashville. These Jets, could they go for 12 wins in a row? Could you imagine? There's no way Gary Bettman lets the Winnipeg Jets win the Stanley Cup this year. That can't happen. That's bad for the league. Minnesota's at Utah, Vancouver at Anaheim, and Chicago is at Las Vegas. All right, it's time to go coast to coast with Arash Madani. He's a traveling man today. It's Arash Madani. And just moments ago, we were talking about one of the 12 games in the NHL tonight. The Edmonton Oilers are in Florida to take on the Panthers. And it's a Stanley Cup final rematch from last season. But no Matthew Tkachuk. Apparently, he's day-to-day, and they're not saying he could be out long-term. And Connor McDavid, if you ask Oiler fans, after scoring the winning goal last week, kind of hasn't looked the same. But Arash, are you saying that this is deeper than just the past 8 days, that his subpar play has been all season?
Well, I think what the Four Nations did is that it revealed to us how the regular season is becoming more and more irrelevant in the NHL. I think it's become incredibly irrelevant in the NBA. I mean, look, let's look at McDavid specifically. He has 8 games without a point, 5-on-5. It's not just been since the Four Nations. 6 games without being on the ice for a goal, 5-on-5. Outscored 10-0, 5-on-5 the last 6 games. And today, Maz, they're back in Florida in the same arena where they lost Game 7. And I think a lot of it's kind of coming to a head right now for McDavid, who, you know, like, what have we known from Connor McDavid if there's two kind of traits, one, elite hockey player, two, cards very close to the best. He doesn't reveal much of his soul. And he came out today and he said, this year hasn't gone the way I would have loved to, personally. You think about where he's at. Right now, he's 38 points behind last year's point totals. And McDavid said today, he said, like, point blank, this was his quote, I wish I was playing better. I wish I had played better all year. Like, so what's the takeaway from that? To me is, there is nothing in pro sports harder than repeating. And I think if you get to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, it's not the same as winning a championship. But this is where I'm going with this: is that, like, you don't have an off season to recover. You don't have time to mentally and physically recharge. You are on this hamster wheel over and over again. There's arguments to be made that some of Brady's Patriots teams that lost the third straight Super Bowl were probably more talented than the first 2 years. There's just nothing left at the end when you keep going and going and going. And I think Connor McDavid, for the first time in his career, is really dealing with that right now.
Well, and the bar has been set so high with what the expectations, because we've all seen Connor McDavid perform at his best. And it's almost like maybe Connor McDavid needs a little 4 seasons break and take time, but they can't. They got to play. I mean, Leon Draisaitl picks up the weight, but I had said last year, after that video footage came out that showed after Game 7 and the tears and just the emotion, I liked him a lot better as a player and as a person. You know what? But that's got to be hard.
Because he looked human. Right?
Yes.
He looked human for the first time in a long time. He didn't come out for the Conn Smythe Trophy presentation. It mattered to him. We saw that.
And you could tell it hurt. You've come all this far to lose. And now you have to try and go to the bottom of the mountain again. And like I said, the grind of the regular season. And, thankfully it's almost March and those meaningless games are almost over, where we're ramping up towards the playoffs. I just think it's a lot of pressure. But if you're the Oilers, like if you're Stan Bowman, what do you do before next Friday to either alleviate the pressure, bring it a little bit of help, say, listen, there's something else here. Like, what's it going to be? Because the guy's looking like he's on the verge of a burnout here.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's pressure. I really don't. I just think it's been a lot for a while. And, the weight of a franchise, I get that Draisaitl's there. I get that Nurse is there. I guess Kane's going to be coming back at some point. But the weight of the world is on his shoulders. But the weight of the world has always been on Sidney Crosby's shoulders, and he's got 3. And the weight of the world's been on Alexander Ovechkin's shoulders, and he's got the 1. It's how you handle this. LeBron James has had the weight of the world on him since he was in 12th grade. Every single year is a referendum on LeBron James's greatness, the comp with Jordan, Kobe, the rest. So I think for the first time, honestly, first time in his life, not his pro career, in his first time in his life, Connor McDavid is dealing with hockey adversity. Connor McDavid is mortal. And I find this so fascinating that when it comes to the greats, when you've had this like magic carpet ride of a career where everything has gone swimmingly, Tom Brady had to go through it in 2008 when he tore his ACL. LeBron James had to go through it when he left Cleveland and all the vitriol that came his way. Now we're going to see what's going to happen with Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes going to have to go through it. Like, this is the stuff where careers are made and how you're measured and all those things. And for the first time, Connor McDavid is going through it. It's fascinating to watch it unfold.
Yeah, because no matter how popular Draisaitl or Nurse or any of those other guys, they'll never have the pressure of McDavid because he's expected to carry it. Nurse could slink out of town with his giant contract and 75% of the fan base would be happy. Draisaitl, it's just not the same. He's Captain Canada now. He has the weight of the world. And so, not great to see. It'll be interesting. Matthew Tkachuk, if he is out long-term and they're hoping he's back to the playoff, have you heard anything potentially what this injury possibly could be? Because they've been very tight-lipped about it.
So Paul Maurice went on a radio station, I want to say in Miami on Tuesday, maybe, and he said that Tkachuk's going to be out long term. He's not going to be back anytime soon, but they expect him to be back by the end of the season. The speculation is that it's a groin. The belief is that it happened, drum roll please, the code, hockey culture, toughness, in the first 9 seconds of the game against Canada.
See, that was going in. We talked about
That's
this.
the belief.
These guys getting hurt, and then they got to go back to their club teams because it's in the middle of the season.
It's one thing to get hurt playing the game. It's one thing to get hurt trying to make a play, trying to score a goal, trying to set something up. It's something when you're putting effort towards winning. A staged fight that was concocted on a group chat with gloves being dropped 9 seconds into a game leading to a significant injury, that's not a hockey injury, Maz. That's a stupidity injury. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm the Florida Panthers, and you can't do this because he's the star of your franchise, I'd have think about putting him on the physically unable to perform list or some kind of suspended list. That's not a hockey-related injury. What's the difference between what Matthew Tkachuk did in the first 9 seconds of that game and getting into a barroom brawl outside the Elbow Room on Lauderdale Beach? Honestly,
nothing. You know, we've all heard those stories of the guy that gets hurt on the jet ski or went downhill skiing on a break or something like that, to be like, oh, whoops. Yeah. And that was always going in to be like, what if somebody randomly or frivolously gets hurt and it affects your team as you head towards the Stanley Cup playoffs? All right. A little over a month away from opening day for the Toronto Blue Jays. They lose today, Grapefruit League action, to the Orioles. Are things already brewing for this not to be a great 2025 for everybody with their fresh, unbent Blue Jay hats? We don't touch the peak anymore, Arash. The young cool kids, that thing says straight brim.
I tell you,
sticker on.
And the sticker on, no question. I get the sense, Maz, that the prevailing narrative dark cloud that's going to hang over this Blue Jays team all year is the situation with Vlad. Mm-hmm. What's Vlad's contract? What's going to happen with Vlad next season? Are the Blue Jays going to offer him something? Is he going to He keeps telling everybody he's going to market. Like he stood there the day he reported, said, I'm talking about this now and I'm not talking about it again. And then you know what he did the other day, Maz? He sat down with he talked about it again with a prominent New York writer, John Heyman, who also does stuff with MLB Network, and said, I'm going to market. And look, Vlad is auditioning no longer just for a contract from one team. He's auditioning for a contract from 30 teams. And I don't blame him. The Toronto Blue Jays signed this kid, at the time he was a kid, out of the Dominican Republic in 2015. They have had ample opportunity to show respect, show a real contract, not take him to arbitration, and they've chosen not to. And what Vlad is now doing is he's returning the favor. I think this is going to be a story that is just going to linger and continue all season.
Can we just fast forward and just get to where he signs with the New York Yankees and just get him there now, trade him, whatever, because when he does end up in pinstripes, because why wouldn't you? And why wouldn't they? Because they have the money and whatever.
Well, but it's not just the Yankees. It's the Red Sox. Mm-hmm. It's the Mets. The Mets just gave Juan Soto $750 million. I mean, do you put it past? I know Freddie Freeman's there with the Dodgers, but do you put it past the Dodgers, who seem to be giving everybody all the money? There are probably a couple of other teams who would like nothing more than a 26-year-old bilingual face of the franchise, light up the sky, sell some tickets, son of a Hall of Famer. There. I don't think it's quote unquote just the Yankees. I think there's going to be a bunch of teams. If Vlad has a monster season, it's a big if, but he's definitely capable of it. There's not going to be 30 teams showing up at his house, Maz. There's going to be 15 Brinks trucks. You know, that's what's coming.
I hear the kids talk about crypto these days, so maybe they just show up with a Bitcoin.
Right.
And get it paid that way. So with all of this going on, is this good for Bo Bichette because he can just be out of the limelight and put together a good season? Because he kind of seems like the forgotten other. The Jays always have had these two young stars. You've had Bichette and Guerrero.
Yeah.
But so where does this leave him?
It's a great question. I think forgotten guy is a really good way of putting it. Obviously last year, the injuries, you almost kind of wondered what happened to Bo? What became of him? For a couple of the years when Vlad was struggling, Bo was okay, and then vice versa. And yeah, like their trajectory has been amazing. They came up together. Bichette drafted 1 year after Guerrero signed. They were on the same every year in A, AA, AAA. They were there on that same kind of rise up the minor leagues. And Bichette's a free agent at the end of the year too. And he's said that there have been no conversations with the front office yet. So I've always had the sense, belief, thought that Bo's gone. That you can basically assure yourself of that. But the question now becomes is, if you don't sign Guerrero, are you really going to let both of them walk and go to market at a time where George Springer's contract is going to be coming up and you don't have much star power and you obviously can't sign any free agent worth of salt? You keep trying, you keep failing. What happens? It's going to be a really fascinating 6 months.
It's funny. We just saw that clip there. I'm still trying to decide how I feel about the home run jacket. I'm okay with necklaces. I like the chains. I don't know about the home run jacket. On a cold night, if the Sky Dome roof was open, sure, I get it. Middle of July, right. I don't know if you need an extra layer. Big news coming out of the NFL. Travis Kelce is coming back. Now, there was word. Was he hurt in the Super Bowl?
I think he was. I'm not sure, and this is not a flex, I swear. I just don't know how much of it, because I went back and watched the TV copy. On the first throw to Kelce on the opening series, Mahomes missed him a little bit to Kelce's right. And as Travis kind of reached down for the football, his entire oblique was kind of exposed, and he got popped. And he just wasn't the same after. For those watching on the stream, that was the throw in the second quarter in the slot. Kelce couldn't catch a regular ball. His blocking was basically useless. On the play that D-Hop dropped right before the half, it's a 17-0 game. Kelce took himself out of the game on 3rd and long. Like, I think in that game, that was kind of like what we talked about with McDavid. I think it's a combination of physically, he was toast. I think he got hurt in that game. But I don't know how you manage Travis Kelce's body next year. Like, load management doesn't exist in the NFL. You almost think that you got to figure out a way to do it. Because you need him healthiest in January and February where he thrives. And if Casey's going to make a run next year, they're going to need 87, but they're going to need to figure out a way to kind of keep him on a pitch count, a snap count, if you will, just to keep him healthy, just to keep him upright.
The NFL Combine is happening in Indianapolis. And Arash, I'm not sure if this has ever happened to you. There was reporter on reporter crime yesterday at a Starbucks where NFL insider Adam Schefter got attacked by, and I don't know the other gentleman's name.
Not Schefter, no. It was Rappaport.
Oh.
It was Rappaport.
Oh,
It wasn't
Rappaport,
Schefter.
not Schefter. So, but it was a Starbucks, right? And were they fighting over a hot tip, or did somebody scoop somebody, or what was the reason for the altercation over lattes?
So they got into, my dad is better than your dad.
Okay.
The irony of the dad thing, and it happening at a Starbucks, Maz, is that Jordan Schultz's father is Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks. I mean, like, it's just magical. Like, it's the Starbucks in the lobby of the hotel, the JW Marriott in downtown Indianapolis, where everyone stays. Like, two petulant children getting into an argument over, I reported this and you MF'd my report and blah, blah, blah. And then one of them allegedly went to NFL security, like he turtled and, went and ratted to the teacher.
No,
Yeah,
not
just bad.
Not a good look.
Not a good look.
Shador Sanders and Ashton Genty won't work out at the NFL Combine, but they will work out at their NFL Pro Days. They say, both of them, that they're more comfortable throwing and working with players that they know on their home turf.
Sure.
Where do you it always used to be like, what are you trying to hide if you're avoiding throwing or working out at the combine, but you'll do it off? Or is it just, or do you believe the comfort excuse? Where do you fall on that?
I think as long as you do it somewhere at some point along the way. And look, I mean, if you're a quarterback, if you're a running back, what are you more comfortable with? Being around familiar surroundings, being around the people that you have a chemistry with, a rapport with, people who know exactly how you're going to be coming out of your break, etc., sleeping in your own bed the night before, etc., etc. You have an opportunity to have an audition and a job interview under your ideal conditions. So why not do it under the best ideal conditions? You're still showing up to the combine. You're still going to do the interviews with the teams. You're still going to do your medical. You're still going to go through it. But when it comes time to showcasing your skills, some people want to do it in an environment they're comfortable with. And I think a lot of talent evaluators, they say that's fine.
Now, for a lot of people, and it's been dubbed the Underwear Olympics,
yes.
The famous picture, and it's 25 years old this year, that Tom Brady, unimpressive as all impressive can be, to go on to be the greatest player in the NFL of all time. So did they put a little too much stock in the combine and not enough into like real life and what happens? Like, it's so funny, that picture. And who would have thought? Like, there's no way in the world anybody could have ever thought that is turning into the greatest to ever play in the NFL. So do you think it's true that he's asked Gronk to come out of retirement and play for the Raiders?
No, I don't. I also remember crazy right around this time, the geniuses who run pro football teams telling Joe Burrow he wouldn't have a future in the league because his hand wasn't big enough. How's that worked out for you so far, people? My favorite part of all these genius talent evaluators, Maz, is, what would you just call Tom Brady the greatest player of all time? Yeah.
I would say in our modern era.
So 30 teams probably at the time. 30 teams passed on him 5 times, and another 20 passed on him 6 times. That's how smart these people are. Let's not lose sight of that now. Caught up in the size of a quarterback's hand.
Do you think with the Olympics next year and flag football is going to be in, how is this going to work when it comes to Canada as to what the States is going to do and some of these other countries? Like, are we trying to put together a Canadian all-star roster? Like, are the football bigwigs of Canada trying to tackle what? Is Joe Burrow going to be playing for Team USA next year in the Olympics? Like, we don't know. Small hands.
We don't know.
Whatever.
Well, here's the question. Like, it's a different game, obviously, tackle and flag. And so, like, does it make more sense? Like, the U.S. has a national flag football team. Does it make more sense to have a couple of those guys on the team, or are you just going to have an all-star team of just talent? Like, does it make more sense to have Tyreek Hill on the team just because of his speed and just throw the ball up to Tyreek and, I don't know, DK Metcalf maybe on the other side and Justin Jefferson on the other side? Or actually be running plays and doing things? What about like we talk about players getting hurt. What about the insurance? Now, I'm sure that, if somebody gets hurt in the lead up to the Olympics or the Olympics, wait a minute, aren't the Olympics going to be right in the teeth of NFL training camp? What's going to happen with the CFL season? Are they going to take an Olympic break? I can't see it. Oh, wait, the league doesn't even have a commissioner that we can ask. So I think right now there are a ton of questions without a lot of answers, and you have national sports federations dealing with pro leagues and the IOC, and a lot of this is for the first time. So I think there's going to have to be some kind of reality to the fantasy football side of this that's going to have to unfold over the next 18 months.
It's funny. We were talking on the show the other day, Barney and I, about NIL money and stuff like that. And then you just mentioned IOC. If there's ever been a good corrupt organization on the same sort of level and stature as the NCAA, the IOC would be like, oh, you want to talk Bagman? Oh, you want to talk about, well, we got a guy for that. The IOC, they've been kind of laying low lately, but they're always there in the underlying.
And here's the other part of this that really, I think all countries involved, especially on the football side, and it may sound like people may roll their eyes on this, but especially in light of like what's happened with Yannick Sinner in tennis, the way world anti-doping works when it comes to the IOC is so different than the drug testing system that the pro leagues use. The pro leagues, like Olympic testing, is so different than that. And the clearance times are so different. So if you want to get involved in the Olympic cycle, usually starting around 12 months out, guys have to start getting tested. So you're probably going to have to put together a list of 50 or 60 guys and women on the women's side who you're going to have as like your identification group. And they're going to have to start getting into the doping testing right away, because nobody needs a Ben Johnson on their hands. We've learned that one the hard way.
Could you imagine if you're the 45th person selected to be like, listen, if the other 44 fail the drug test, honestly, you're in. You're going to be our starting slot back or whatever. There's just a few people ahead of you, but we'll do that. Arash, safe travels.
Thank you.
If you're having an old fashioned in the airport lounge, have two. Have one for everybody else that can't right now because we're on the road driving.
I wasn't planning on it, Matt, but now that you brought it up, it might hit the spot. So thanks for the suggestion.
All right, it's Coast to Coast with Arash Madani for Smart Investing Solutions. Be smart with your money. Call Brian Gawley at Smart Investing Solutions. Maybe he can talk crypto. 546-2533. All right, it's time to take a break. A quiet night in the Western Hockey League. No games, but tomorrow blasting off with a 10-pack, including the Pats hosting the Medicine Hat Tigers, minus one WHL superstar because of a 3-game suspension. We'll explain next. It is the Sports Cage, streaming at sportscage.com, on our YouTube channel, and on the radio 620 CKRM. This part of the show is brought to you by Canadian Brewhouse. Thursdays are pasta and uncorked Thursdays. You can get pasta on special for just $11.99, like creamy grilled chicken Alfredo, Alberta beef Wagyu ravioli, basil chicken penne, the triple mac and cheese, and the barn burner beef stroganoff. You can get 50% more wine. You can get a 9-ounce glass of wine for the price of a 6-ounce and $1 off tankards. Bud and Bud Light. Canadian Brewhouse. 2 locations in Regina, 1 in Moose Jaw. The Double C's, great job today, guys. Today, before the show, went to the gym. Got to try and stay fit, right? As you get older, got to work with what you got. Today was Throwback Thursday. And I'm not sure if you guys go to gyms or how you work out or stay fit, but there were dudes with weight belts all over the place. And that was a staple of gyms in the 80s and 90s, but you don't see a lot of that anymore. And for whatever reason today, all sorts of dudes with weight belts on. And of course, when you have weight belts, you always wear weight gloves, because you guys were making fun of me last time because I said I wear gloves with no fingers on them. And
soft
that's
hands,
just
brother.
a total, yeah, it's soft hands. And it's just it's a cheese ball look when you're wearing the weightlifting gloves, and especially when you're not weightlifter-esque. Okay. But
Yeah, if your arms aren't the size of my legs, I don't feel like you should be wearing gloves. Like, I don't think you need to worry about the weight tearing the skin off your hands for graphicness there.
shut up. I have delicate hands. Okay.
All right.
But
All
I
right.
saw
Soft
something.
hands, brother. Soft hands.
A first today in the gym I've never seen before. And I don't know this guy. I'm like, is he just conscientious? Is he helping everybody else? Do you want to put this picture up? So this guy right here, because I'm like, I have to get a picture of this or no one's going to believe me. This guy walked around the gym with his own container of Lysol wipes. So if you're watching the stream, they're right there on the top of the machine. So every place he would go, he would Lysol wipe before This was the ridiculous part. He would do before, but then he would do it after he was done as well, cleaning it for the next person. And he doesn't work there. He was just a customer that was working out. But he walked around with that container of Lysol wipes for 45 minutes, no matter where he went, the before and after.
You know what?
Have you
That
guys
guy might
ever
be
seen that
a
before?
Super genius, actually. You know, that's public places are nasty, man.
You know who that guy is? He should be our clutch performer for today from Nick's service. Like, flat out. Kudos to you.
Well, it's cold and flu season, and if he's just doing his part, and listen, I don't know if I have no judgment on that, because I can't decide. I'm like, this guy, it was either a genius move or not. And here's the thing: if he's doing this, what other things is he doing in his life that if we were to follow him around with a camera for 24 hours, that we would see to be like, okay,
I feel
that
like
fits
that's
right
just,
in with.
Yeah, it's good karma out there, because there's, for the one guy that goes and maybe Lysol wipes one handle, there's another guy that
doesn't wash his hands leaving the bathroom.
Yeah, and getting a little bit of fecal matter on every single door handle. This guy's out there solving the world's problems. Thank you, Lysol dude.
If they could, there's two things. The people that don't take off their shoes at the front door of the gym, because you're supposed to bring a second pair of shoes because it's like sloppy and slushy out. That, first of all, I do like the shoe police. They should not let you in. And secondly, Colson, the not washing the bathroom crowd. Like, if there was an alarm that could go off to be like automatically get you a 1 week suspension, that you're out of there.
Yeah, that's
you gotta
nasty.
Go. It's a big weekend for hockey. Senior hockey tomorrow night. Round Lake Bears in Wynyard to take on the Monarchs. The building, this is crazy. It's already sold out. 1,350 people will be in Wynyard tomorrow night to watch this hockey game. Speaking of lineups for the bathroom and maybe people not washing their hands. Oh my. Wow. That's crazy. Keniston Blizzard, Loreburn 19ers tomorrow, 8 o'clock in Loreburn. That's game 3 to decide who moves on to the next round of the provincials. Western Hockey League tomorrow night, 10 games. The Pats are hosting the Medicine Hat Tigers at the Brandt Center. Gavin McKenna, Slash as we call him, will not be in the lineup for Medicine Hat. Look at that two-hander. Nice. The Western Hockey League Discipline Department coming down saying that's a 3-game suspension, Mr. McKenna. We don't care if you're going to take off for the NCAA for NIL money. You will be in the press box. Are you guys surprised that's 3 games? I think that's about right. It's pretty vicious slash.
As Munzie was saying yesterday, it's a first-time offense, but it was intentional.
That's a good offense.
He was going for him. You got to be at least 3. So, I agree with that.
I feel like, in a sport where debatably everything you have is a weapon, like weapons on your feet, weapons in your hand, going out of your way to swing it so hard that it snaps on someone, that's not cool. It doesn't matter if you're the biggest talent in the entire league, you should be suspended for that.
Tomorrow night, the pregame show starts right here on 620 CKRM at 6:30. We'll have face-off with Dante DeCaria at 7. Of the 10 games tomorrow night, 1 to watch. Edmonton's at PA. PA, one of the best teams in the Eastern Division. They've organically climbed their way into first place. The Edmonton Oil Kings, what did I read today? A 59% chance that they'll get the number 1 draft pick overall in the Bantam draft this year, if it all works out. And that number 1 pick, without a doubt, will be Maddox Schultz from the Regina Pat Canadians.
Oh, probably.
The number 2 pick, the Regina Pats. So we'll see. So are the Oil Kings kind of tanking down the stretch here, knowing that they're kind of know where they're going to end up, but to do themselves a favor when it comes to draft status, we don't know. Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League last night, there was 2 games. Weyburn, the Wings beat the Broncos 4-2. LaRange beat Nipawin 5-2. 1 game tonight. Estevan is at Notre Dame. 5 games tomorrow night. Kindersley at Nipawin, Melville at Weyburn, Humboldt at Yorkton, Estevan at Battlefords, Flin Flon at Melfort. And then actually, the Saskatchewan AAA season will wrap up tonight of a rescheduled game. Saskatoon Blazers are going to be in Estevan to play the Bears. Now, the playoffs will start this weekend, but we don't know when the Pat Canadians and the PA Mintos are going to play. That's still be determined. Same with the Blazers and Trojans. Moose Jaw Warriors taking on Estevan Great North Bears. Game 1 is Sunday. Moose Jaw 1:30. And the Swift Current Legionnaires are taking on the Worm Wildcats. Game 1 is Sunday, 5:30 in Swift Current. All right, that'll do it for the Thursday edition of the Sports Cage. If you missed any part of the show, we chatted with Dave Thomas, voice of the Riders, Matt Scott, head coach of Fort Knox, Fort Capel. They'll get their PJHL playoffs rolling tomorrow. Glen Suitor and Arash Madani. You can always catch the podcast, Apple, Spotify, and at sportscage.com. Have a great night. Barney's back in tomorrow. This is the Sports Cage on 620 CKRM.